We are commencing legal action against Mrs. Meghan Markle. Her televised allegations, particularly the Oprah interview, have inflicted undue harm upon the royal family. An apology no longer suffices. The matter will now proceed through the...
Before dawn reached Buckingham Palace, a silent command had begun rewriting royal history. Meghan's honorary titles, ceremonial distinctions, and patronage references were removed from official palace records under the authority of King Charles. There was no public ceremony, no televised declaration, and no opportunity for negotiation. Only locked offices, altered files, and one devastating realization. By sunrise, the institution would no longer describe her as it had the night before. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles sat alone with the order before him. The administrative order, a formal instruction used to make palace changes, carried consequences beyond a few edited lines. It directed staff to remove Meghan's honorary titles, ceremonial descriptions, and patronage references from the royal website, the internal ceremonial registry, archived briefing papers, and future editions of the court circular, the official daily record of royal engagements. The king read Meghan's name twice. His hand tightened around the pen, then stopped. He looked toward a framed family photograph and said nothing. The silence burdened a father and monarch who understood that one signature could close a door years of conflict had left barely open. Then he lowered the pen and signed. Across the palace, archivists opened sealed instructions at the same hour. Password-protected files appeared on their screens one after another. This was no sudden burst of anger. Someone had prepared every step, timed every revision, and ensured no department could delay the operation once Charles gave the command. Meghan received the secure message in California while standing. She read the first sentence, froze, and lowered herself into a chair. The order did not remove her place in the extended family, but it erased the official language connecting her to royal service. What remained was no longer a living role. It had been pushed into history. Her shock hardened into controlled anger when she noticed the changes were complete. No warning had come. No conversation had been offered. The palace had not asked for her response, because it had decided her response no longer mattered. One official paused before deleting the final honorary designation from the ceremonial database. A senior courtier entered, watched the cursor hover, and spoke with chilling calm. The king wants no exceptions. The last entry disappeared, yet Charles had only signed the order. The speed, precision, and coordination suggested another royal figure had shaped this decision long before midnight. The files had changed in a single night, but the emotions behind them had been building for years, and Meghan was not the only person who understood what had just been lost. Behind the official language were four people carrying four very different wounds. Charles saw a monarchy he believed had been challenged too many times. Meghan saw another attempt to erase the life she had once built inside the palace. Harry saw an attack on his wife that reopened his own separation from the crown. William saw a painful decision he believed had become unavoidable. The order looked administrative on paper, but it became deeply personal in every room it entered. Meghan understood what had truly been taken. Her honorary roles were not empty phrases. An honorary royal role was a symbolic position linking a person to public service, charities, and the authority of the crown. Those distinctions proved she had once been welcomed, trusted, and presented as part of the monarchy's future. Removing them did more than update a record. It turned an unfinished relationship into a chapter the palace now considered formally closed. Harry read the secure message twice, then crossed the room without speaking. He asked whether she wanted him to contact his father. Meghan looked directly at him and answered that the decision had already replied to every question Charles had refused to discuss. The Duke stopped near the window, his anger rising, because the order felt like punishment aimed at her, but delivered through the institution that had shaped his entire life. Charles carried a different burden. The king believed titles had meaning only when they reflected active service, loyalty, and responsibility. To him, leaving Meghan's distinctions untouched created confusion about whether she still spoke with royal recognition. Yet the monarch also knew that removing them would look less like discipline and more like rejection. That knowledge did not stop him, but it made the silence around him heavier. William received confirmation at Windsor and closed the folder slowly. The prince rubbed his forehead before asking whether Meghan had been warned. When an aide said she was informed only after the process began, He looked away. He supported the outcome, but the method troubled him. The future king had wanted clarity. He had not expected the final act to feel so cold. Camilla noticed the tension at breakfast. The queen consort watched Charles leave his tea untouched and asked whether the operation was complete. He answered, "It is now." Her quiet nod revealed that she had known about the plan before most senior members of the household. Meghan had expected confrontation, perhaps another statement or private disagreement. She had not expected deletion without debate. That method unsettled her most. Yet one moment had pushed Charles toward this decision. It happened after a royal memorial ceremony, where a single sentence from Meghan changed the atmosphere forever. To understand the king's resolve, the story must return to that closed room. The final order did not begin with a website update or a legal memorandum. It began months earlier inside a private reception room at Windsor, after a memorial ceremony attended by senior members of the family. The guests had departed. The doors were closed. What should have been a restrained conversation about future cooperation became the moment Charles decided that reconciliation and royal authority could no longer occupy the same space. One exchange turned old resentment into an irreversible decision. Tension had already been building behind palace walls. Meghan's representatives and royal staff had clashed repeatedly over how her former royal links could appear in charity material, public biographies, and international engagements. An honorary distinction was a symbolic royal connection rather than an active working position, yet the palace feared those references might still suggest official support. Meghan saw them as part of her history. Charles saw growing confusion. The king believed a written agreement could end the dispute quietly. He wanted language making clear that her past associations did not represent current palace approval. To him, that boundary protected the crown from mixed messages. To Meghan, it sounded like another demand to surrender control over how her own years of service would be remembered. Charles entered the reception room with Meghan, Harry, and William after the memorial ceremony. No advisors followed them. The monarch placed a revised statement on the table and asked her to approve it. She read the wording, set it down, and answered with calm force, "You cannot invite me into history and then control how I remember it." The sentence changed everything. Charles did not raise his voice. He folded the statement once and placed it back on the table. The king told her that royal recognition could not be separated from royal responsibility. His disappointment was colder than anger, and Meghan understood that he was no longer asking for cooperation. He was measuring whether any trust remained. Harry stepped in immediately. The Duke argued that his wife was being punished because she had built a life beyond palace control. William answered that the dispute was not about where they lived, it was about authority. The prince said the crown could not allow former roles to carry present meaning without present duty. The brothers stared at each other across the room. Harry saw rejection. William saw defiance. Neither man moved closer. Meghan and her husband left soon afterward, but Charles remained with his eldest son. The king asked for a complete review of every title, patronage reference, and ceremonial distinction still attached to her name. William asked whether he intended to remove them. Charles looked toward the closed door. "I intend to discover whether they still belong there." That sentence became the foundation of the Midnight Order. When Meghan later learned the records had been erased, she rejected a written explanation and demanded to speak directly with Charles. Against his aide's advice, the monarch agreed. The review had begun in silence, but the next stage would not be silent at all, because Meghan was about to confront the man whose signature had erased her royal standing. No secretaries entered the room. No lawyers sat between them. Charles and Meghan faced each other with only a low table, 2 untouched glasses of water, and years of unresolved grievance separating their chairs. She had not come to plead for the titles to be restored. She had come to force the king to acknowledge what his order meant. But he was equally determined to make clear that the monarchy could no longer carry symbols of a relationship neither side was willing to live. Charles had refused to delegate the conversation. The secure video connection, a private encrypted link used for confidential talks, allowed him to speak without palace officials listening. The king insisted the decision was his. Meghan deserved to hear the reasoning from him, not through a statement written by someone who had never carried the weight of their history. Meghan wanted more than an explanation. She needed to know whether the removal had been presented to the family as a simple clerical correction, or as a deliberate judgment on her place in royal life. To her, the order was not neutral. It was a warning that the palace still believed it owned the official version of her story. Meghan leaned forward. Her voice stayed calm. but her hands tightened together. "You did not correct a record. You erased me from it." Charles did not look away. The monarch answered that history had not been deleted. Active recognition had been withdrawn. He told her that she could not reject the institution's authority in public, while expecting its honors to remain untouched in private. The king's tone remained controlled, yet every word carried the force of a door closing. Meghan pushed her chair back and stood. For several seconds, neither spoke. She believed the conversation was over. Charles asked her to sit. The king said there was one final distinction she needed to understand. After a long pause, Meghan returned to the chair, but she did not move it closer. The distance between them remained exactly where she had left it. Charles then revealed something she had never heard before. Before signing the order, he had approved an alternative proposal. Her former titles could remain in archived historical records if she signed a statement confirming they carried no current official function. An archived record was simply a permanent historical entry, not an active royal role. Meghan stared at him. She said no such proposal had ever reached her. The silence that followed felt different. Charles asked when her office had last received palace correspondence. Meghan gave the date. The king checked his notes and realized the document had been sent earlier. Someone had stopped it. The decision still stood, but the meaning of the meeting changed in an instant. The confrontation had exposed pain on both sides, yet it had also uncovered something more dangerous. The king's order had passed through hands powerful enough to shape its outcome. Royal power rarely announces itself with raised voices. It moves through revised language, delayed messages, closed folders, and instructions delivered so calmly that resistance appears improper. After Meghan revealed that Charles's compromise never reached her, the king ordered a private examination of the process. What emerged was not a conspiracy against the crown, but a determined faction inside the household, convinced that compromise would only prolong instability, and William stood closer to that judgment than anyone expected. Charles still held the final authority. The royal household, the network of officials who manage the monarch's public duties, records, protocol, and reputation, could advise and prepare the decision, but only the king could approve it. Yet those officials had shaped every option placed before him. Their recommendation was clear: remove the titles, end the ambiguity, and prevent future disputes over whether Meghan still carried royal recognition. William had argued the same point for months. The prince believed unresolved titles created a permanent weakness. Every charity launch, public speech, or international appearance could revive the question of whether Meghan acted with palace approval. To the future king, uncertainty was not harmless. It was a door that could be opened again and again. William received the blocked proposal alone in his office. He read Meghan's delivery address, then noticed the words, "Held for further review," stamped across the cover. His thumb pressed hard against the page. The frustration was immediate, because the document proved that someone had made a choice without admitting it. Charles entered soon afterward, and asked whether his son knew the offer had been stopped. William answered that he had not ordered the delay. Then he added something more difficult. He would have opposed the compromise anyway. The king's expression changed. Charles told him that supporting a final decision was not the same as deciding what information the monarch was allowed to send. The prince accepted the rebuke, but he did not retreat. He said the compromise preserved the very confusion they were trying to end. If Meghan's titles remained anywhere active enough to be cited, the dispute would never truly close. The private review soon identified the intervention. A senior private secretary, meaning a top advisor who controls sensitive correspondence and access to the monarch, had withheld the proposal after officials concluded Meghan might use it as proof of continuing royal recognition. The decision had been strategic, not accidental. Charles felt manipulated, but he did not reverse the order. The king separated the failure of the process from the judgment itself. Restoring the titles now, he warned, would make the monarchy appear controlled by pressure rather than principle. Within hours, the consequences moved beyond files. Invitations changed. Correspondence templates were rewritten. Ceremonial seating records were altered. Charles had reclaimed control of the process, but he refused to reclaim the titles. And the first physical signs of Meghan's new reality were already arriving. The most painful consequences were not hidden inside legal language. They appeared in small objects that once carried enormous meaning: an invitation without an honorific, a ceremonial list with a blank space, a nameplate lifted from storage and marked for archival transfer. For Meghan, the royal order became real, when a package arrived containing material once reserved for active honorary figures. Nothing inside was valuable. Yet every object confirmed that the palace considered the relationship officially finished. Meghan opened the package slowly. Palace departments had already revised correspondence templates, patronage histories, ceremonial precedence documents, digital biographies, and internal contact records. Ceremonial precedence meant the formal order used to place royal figures at official events. Her former distinctions had now been removed from active categories and pushed into historical archives, where they could be remembered but no longer used. Meghan lifted out an embossed folder, an old ceremonial pass, and a small engraved nameplate from an earlier engagement. Her expression changed when she turned it over and saw a white archival sticker across the back. The label reduced years of public service to a numbered item waiting to be stored. Harry watched from the doorway. He expected anger, but she did not throw anything aside. Meghan placed each object carefully on the table, almost as though she were preserving evidence of a life the palace had just declared complete. She told him the monarchy had turned years of service into inventory. The Duke opened his mouth, then stopped. He had no answer strong enough for the sadness in her voice. Harry's grief quickly became fury. He wanted to release a public statement accusing Charles of deliberate humiliation. The Duke argued that silence would allow the palace to define the decision as harmless administration. Meghan stopped him before he could send anything. She warned that an emotional attack would let the institution portray them as unstable, bitter, and unable to accept boundaries. The consequences spread beyond the family. Former patronage organizations received palace guidance, telling them to describe Meghan's connection in the past tense. A patronage was an official royal relationship with a charity or public cause, giving that organization visibility and prestige. Several groups began rewriting biographies to avoid suggesting present royal support. One organization refused to move so quickly. Its director delayed changing the website and sent Meghan a private message thanking her for the work she had completed. The note did not challenge Charles openly, but it proved the palace could control titles without controlling gratitude. Meghan drafted her own response. She removed every accusation and wrote only that service should be measured by impact, not rank. She would not fight Charles on institutional ground. Then Catherine called. No aide arranged it. Neither Charles nor William knew. The palace expected defiance, but the turning point arrived through a quiet conversation between two women carrying years of unresolved hurt. The conversation began without titles. Catherine did not call as the Princess of Wales, and Meghan did not answer as a former working royal. For the first time in years, they spoke simply as two women who had endured the machinery of the same family from opposite sides. No apology could repair everything between them. Yet in that unrecorded exchange, Meghan heard something the palace message had never offered: recognition that losing a title could still feel like losing part of oneself. Catherine had learned that the archival package had arrived. The Princess of Wales, the title held by the wife of the future king, remembered how intensely Meghan once prepared for royal engagements, and how carefully she studied every expectation placed before her. Whatever had happened between them, she did not believe one order should erase every contribution that came before it. Catherine called without advisors. No communications team approved her words, and no written talking points sat in front of her. She knew William might see the contact as a risk, because the palace was trying to present one clear position. Still, she spoke as herself, not as part of a strategy. Silence stretched between them. Catherine finally said, "They can change the record, but they cannot make those years unreal." Meghan closed her eyes. For the first time since receiving the order, the tension in her face eased. She admitted the titles themselves mattered less than the message behind their removal. What hurt was the suggestion that she had never truly belonged. Catherine answered carefully. She said belonging inside the royal family had always been conditional, even for those who stayed. The institution offered identity, but it also demanded obedience. Meghan understood the truth in that, though it did not erase the pain between them. Meghan then asked the question neither woman could avoid. Had Catherine supported the decision? Catherine did not hide behind silence. She said she supported clearer boundaries, but not the coldness of the execution. The answer did not create reconciliation. It created honesty. Catherine offered to speak to Charles. She would ask the king to preserve a permanent historical record of Meghan's completed work, separate from any active honorary status. A historical record meant an official account of past service, without restoring a current royal role. Meghan refused at first. She would not appear to beg for mercy. Then she reconsidered. Meghan agreed on one condition. The record had to honor the staff, charities, and communities involved, not simply protect her image. Her focus had shifted. She was no longer defending a title. She was defending the meaning of the work. Before Catherine could approach Charles, the story exploded into public view. One newspaper front page turned their fragile understanding into an international spectacle. The two women had found a narrow path toward truth, but outside the palace walls, everything was already being reduced to one brutal headline. By sunrise, the decision was no longer contained within palace offices. Phones lit up, broadcasters interrupted scheduled programming, and royal correspondents gathered outside Buckingham Palace beneath a gray morning sky. The private meaning of the order vanished beneath louder public interpretations. To some, Charles had restored discipline. To others, he had punished a woman who had already left royal life behind. One newspaper image captured the conflict so powerfully that even the palace could not ignore it. The story spread within minutes. Digital comparisons showed that Meghan's honorary designations had disappeared from official records overnight. Screenshots of the old entries and the revised versions moved across social media, newsrooms, and international broadcasts. An honorary association meant a symbolic royal link to a charity or public role, and its removal now looked less like administration and more like a public break. Buckingham Palace responded with a short statement. The palace described the changes as the completion of a long-planned review of inactive honorary associations. The wording avoided direct criticism of Meghan, but it confirmed that Charles had personally approved the final revisions. That detail mattered, because it ended any suggestion that officials had acted without the king's knowledge. Outside a newspaper kiosk near Victoria Station, commuters stopped before one front page. Two images appeared side by side, Meghan at her first royal engagement, and the blank space where her titles had once appeared. The headline read, "The final line removed." An elderly woman stood studying the page as a broadcaster approached. The retired teacher looked into the camera and said, "You can support the monarchy and still feel that this was cruel." Her words spread across morning programs, because they captured the public divide more clearly than any palace statement. Charles watched the coverage at breakfast. The king lowered the television volume when commentators called the decision an act of revenge. His face tightened, but he refused to issue a personal defense. The monarch believed explaining himself emotionally would weaken the authority of the order, yet silence allowed harsher motives to fill the space. Networks prepared for Meghan's response. Palace officials feared she would reveal details from her private conversation with Charles and reopen every family wound. Commentators expected anger, accusation, and another royal confrontation. Meghan chose something else. She released a brief written message honoring the communities, charities, and staff she had served. She did not attack Charles. She did not demand restoration. Her restraint left both supporters and critics without the battle they expected. The public had prepared for another royal war, but Meghan's refusal to escalate forced Charles toward one final choice: protect the crown through total erasure, or admit that ending her active role did not require denying the service that had already happened. The conclusion did not restore Meghan's honorary titles. It did something quieter and, in the end, more meaningful. Charles refused to reverse the authority of his midnight order, but he also refused to let institutional discipline become historical dishonesty. After days of anger, private confrontation, and public division, the king made one final amendment. Meghan would no longer hold active honorary recognition, yet the official record would permanently acknowledge the service she had completed while representing the crown. Charles reached his final decision after long hours of reflection. Palace Archives, the official collection that preserves the monarchy's permanent historical records, received new instructions to separate active honors from completed service. Meghan's honorary titles would remain withdrawn, preserving the authority of the original order. At the same time, every verified engagement, charitable contribution, and official appearance completed during her years of royal duty would be restored to a permanent historical section where the record could not be altered by future debate. Buckingham Palace released its final statement soon afterward. The announcement confirmed that no active title, patronage, or ceremonial privilege had been returned. A patronage was an official royal connection with a charity or public organization. The revised archive existed for one purpose only: to ensure that ending a formal royal relationship did not erase documented service that had genuinely taken place. Charles returned to the same desk where he had signed the midnight order. Catherine's proposal rested before him. The king read every page carefully, picked up his pen, and signed without hesitation. He closed the folder and quietly said, "Ending a role does not require denying that it was lived." No celebration followed, only acceptance. Meghan opened the updated historical record later that day. She slowly read through the restored entries and found the names of charities, staff members, volunteers, and community organizations preserved alongside her own contributions. She did not smile, but the strain in her face softened. The recognition she accepted was no longer about rank. It was about truth. Harry watched her finish reading before opening the statement he had prepared days earlier. Without another word, he deleted every line calling for retaliation. The Duke looked at Meghan and said that the family might never agree on everything that had happened, but the institution could no longer pretend that those years of service meant nothing. She quietly nodded, knowing that was enough. Charles understood the personal cost of his decision. The king knew his relationship with his son and daughter-in-law had been permanently changed. He expected neither gratitude nor reconciliation. He accepted that responsibility sometimes demanded choices that carried lasting pain. The verdict was now unmistakable. Meghan's honorary royal identity had formally ended, but her service would remain part of the monarchy's permanent history. Charles protected the crown's boundaries without reducing the past to a blank page. Meghan walked away without the titles, yet not without dignity. The conflict reached its true conclusion because neither side would spend another day trying to erase what had already been lived. The palace had removed Meghan's titles overnight, but its final judgment proved that authority could close a chapter without tearing that chapter from history. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.